All right, meeting is now being recorded.
Thank you. Good evening. I would like to call this meeting, this regular Planning Commission meeting of May 10th, 2021 to order. Would you all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? And Miguel, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Absolutely. Everybody please stand. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag, to the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all.
Thank you, Miguel. Madam Secretary, will you please call roll?
Yes, roll call. Commissioner Alderete.
Here.
Commissioner Calderon.
Present.
Vice Chair Morrissey.
Here.
Commissioner Pham.
Here.
Commissioner Ramos. Commissioner Ramos, you are muted.
Sorry, present.
Thank you. Commissioner Wu
Here.
and Chair McLaughlin.
Here.
Chair, you have quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I would now like to ask the Commission Secretary to describe the way the public can access this virtual meeting.
Thank you, Chair. This meeting is being live streamed via our portal at www.santa-ana.primegov.com/public/portal and to YouTube at youtube.com/City of Santa Ana videos/live. If you would like to provide a public comment, you may do so in the following ways. Join the meeting via Zoom. Enter meeting ID 953-262-52844. When the item that you would like to comment on is being discussed, select the hand icon to let us know that you would like to speak. You will be called upon by the name you entered. You may also call 669-900-9128. Enter meeting ID 953-262-52844. When the item that you would like to comment on is being discussed, press *9 to let us know that you would like to speak. You will be called upon by the last 3 digits of your phone number. After you are called upon, you must press *6 to unmute yourself. You will have 3 minutes to speak. I will alert you when your time is up. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Moving on to public comments on non-agenda items. Madam Secretary, does anybody wish to speak at this time?
If you would like to speak on a non-agenda item, please select the hand icon or dial *9 now. We do not have anyone that would like to speak on non-agenda items.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. With that, the public comments portion of this meeting will be closed. We'll move on to the consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve item number 1, minutes of the meeting of April 26th? Do we have a motion? Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting of April 26th?
This is Commissioner Wu. I move we approve the minutes.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll go ahead and second.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please do a roll call vote.
Commissioner Alderete.
Yes.
Commissioner Calderon.
Aye.
Vice Chair Morrissey.
Aye.
Commissioner Pham.
Aye.
Commissioner Ramos. Commissioner Ramos, I believe you're muted.
Aye.
Thank you. And Chair McLaughlin.
Aye.
You skipped me.
Motion passes by unanimous.
We didn't get Commissioner Wu.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Wu. I looked right over your name. Commissioner Wu.
Aye.
Chair McLaughlin, I have you as aye. Motion passes by unanimous consent.
Thank you. Since everyone is here tonight, we will not have to do item number 2. With that, we will close the consent calendar, and we're going to move on to the public hearings. I'd like to just go through some protocols with regards to public hearings. Staff will provide a presentation and answer any questions from the commission. The public hearing will then be open. The applicant will be given the opportunity to speak, limited to 15 minutes. Members of the public will be given the opportunity to comment, limited to 3 minutes. The applicant will be given an opportunity to respond to these comments made by the public, limited to 5 minutes. The public hearing will then be closed and brought back to the Planning Commission. Discussion at the Planning Commission with the formal action taken to approve, conditionally approve, deny, or continue the review of the application. Please consider the following suggestions when organizing your comments. Please state your name and address. State whether or not you support, oppose, or are neutral to this proposal. Your statement should include all pertinent facts within your knowledge. Avoid gossip, emotion, repetition. A clear, concise, and non-repetitive argument is most effective. This is the time and place for the public hearing on item number 1, the property located at 2106 North Tustin Avenue. Please note, decision on this matter is final unless appealed within 10 days by any interested individual or party. Before we begin, do any of the commissioners have anything they wish to disclose with regards to this item? Commissioner Alderete?
None.
Commissioner Calderon?
Nothing to disclose.
Vice Chair Morrissey?
No disclosures.
Commissioner Fan?
Nothing to disclose.
Commissioner Ramos?
I have to recuse myself from this item as it's within the 500-foot boundary of my residence.
Okay, thank you for doing that. At this point in time, you're no longer part of this discussion. Thank you. Commissioner Wu?
None.
All right, I myself have nothing to discuss at this point in time. With that, Jerry, you're going to be presenting item number 1. Please do so.
Just one moment. One moment, please. No.
Sorry, Chairman, we're having some technical difficulties, but good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. This first item is a conditional use permit request for after-hours operations on behalf of the business owner, Veronica Salcedo, for an existing restaurant located at 2106 North Tustin Avenue, known as La Catrina, and is located within Ward 3 for City Council. Staff is recommending approval of the item as conditioned. Moving on to the second slide. As mentioned, the subject site is located at 2106 North Tustin Avenue, as indicated on the red triangle on the aerial view being displayed. It's located between Santa Clara Avenue to the north and Catalina Avenue to the south. The project property has a general plan land use designation of general commercial and a zoning designation of arterial commercial. Surrounding land uses include commercial to the north, east, and south, and a multifamily development to the west. The lot measures approximately 0.51 acres, and the restaurant itself is approximately 3,700 square feet. Moving on to the next slide. This is a site photo of the current restaurant off of Tustin Avenue. Moving on to the next slide. As mentioned, the restaurant is located within a 3,700 square foot commercial building that was constructed in the 1960s. The restaurant was formerly known as Chili's and Beers, which was recently changed about a month ago, and has been operating since 2016 with the current ownership. And the restaurant itself specializes in traditional Mexican cuisine. In 1993, the Planning Commission approved conditional use permit number 1993-09, which allowed the sale of beer, wine, and distilled spirits for on-site consumption at the subject restaurant. As part of this conditional use permit, the applicant is requesting for after-hours operation, which is being proposed Monday through Sunday from 11 a.m. to 2 a.m. No live entertainment is being requested at this time. Moving on to the next slide. This is a site plan of the current layout of the property. The restaurant itself sits at the center of the property with two surface lots, one at the front and then one at the rear. Moving on to the next slide, this is the floor plan of the existing restaurant. No proposed tenant improvements or alterations are being proposed at this time. In red, that is the current location of the alcohol storage, which again, it's well below the allowed storage and display area as regulated by their current conditional use permit. So in reviewing conditional use permit requests for after-hours operations, staff analyzes the project location based on criminal statistics, as well as proximity to sensitive land uses. And in addition, we also look at any improvements to the site that can be conducted to better mitigate any potential impacts. With that, as mentioned, there is a residential community to the west, which is approximately 130 feet from the restaurant. However, those buildings are buffered by a parking lot at the current restaurant, as well as a driveway and carports on the community or the residential community development. With that, staff is recommending various conditions of approval. One of them is the construction of a brand new 7-foot CMU wall along the rear of the property line to basically serve as a sound barrier. In addition to that, as part of police analysis, we are requesting that the applicant also upgrade their existing exterior lighting to comply with Chapter 8 of the Santa Ana Municipal Code, which pretty much requires certain light standards to be installed. In addition, we are asking that the parking lot be restriped, as well as any damaged wheel stops to be replaced. We are asking as well that the conditional use permit be renewed or be reviewed within the next 6 months from the date issuance of the resolution. And then lastly, we are requesting that the business owner's contact information or another employee's contact information be posted on site in case there are any complaints by the neighboring tenants or residents. This application, like any other request for conditional use permit, was reviewed by the police department. The police department is satisfied that the operational standards and proposed conditions of approval will mitigate any potential impacts to the surrounding community, and therefore does not oppose the granting of the CUP. Lastly, conditions of approval, property maintenance agreement, and standards in the Santa Ana Municipal Code will address any potential negative impacts. In terms of the California Environmental Quality Act, the project is categorically exempt pursuant to Section 15301, existing facilities of the CEQA guidelines, and an environmental review number 2021-24 will be filed with the county for this project, and there are no fiscal impacts associated with this project. And with that, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution approving conditional use permit number 2021-06 as conditioned. And that concludes that presentation, and I'm here to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate the presentation. With that, I'm going to get on the list and ask if any of the commissioners have any questions. Commissioner Alderetti, any questions of staff?
Sure. A couple of questions. Thank you for that condition number 9. I think that offsets some of the impacts to the folks on the west. I was wondering if we had any experience with this applicant since 2016, like calls for service. I think that was the time at which they took over the existing business.
Commissioner Alderetti, can you repeat your question?
Sure. So we have, do we have any experience with the applicant since 2016, such as calls for service at this location?
Commissioner Alderetti, there has no been any calls for service at this location since 2016.
Great. I don't have any other questions.
Okay, Commissioner Calderon.
Yes, I have a question. So I'm actually looking up the applicant on Google and trying to see like if there's any like Yelp reviews, and I see none. But I do see something that is sharing the same address and it's being called Breakaway Sports Lounge and Eatery. Is that the same spot, or was that the previous name, or what's going on right there? Or is that a typo from Google?
Chairman Calderon, as mentioned, this business prior to La Catrina was known as Chili's and Beer, which was owned by the current owner. Prior to that, I'm not too sure who the other tenants were, but I could take a look at Google Maps for you really quick.
Okay. It's being named as Breakaway Sports Lounge and Eatery, permanently closed.
Okay, any other questions, Commissioner?
No, that's the only question. So I just wanted to ask, like, was that before or is that a typo? Just wondering.
Okay,
Yeah, I was really hoping there would be some like Yelp reviews or something so I could see, what the what people's perspective or experience has been. I was really hoping that I could see something like that, but there is none. No further questions.
okay.
Commissioner Calderon, just to answer your questions, like I mentioned, Chili's and Beers was a former business name for this particular restaurant. Prior to that, it used to be Breakaway Sports Lounge and Eatery. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, that business owner canceled their business license and their certificate of occupancy back in 2008.
Got it. Okay. Thank you so much. I have no further questions.
Okay. Commissioner, Vice Chair Morrissey. Tom? Vice Chair Morrissey.
Vice Chair Morrissey, you are muted.
There we go. Sorry about that. No, I don't have any questions. I appreciate the conditions that staff placed on the project to help mitigate any concerns public might have or residential uses on the opposite side might have as well.
Okay. Commissioner Fan?
No questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Wu?
No question, but I like the mitigation staff added.
Okay. I have a couple of questions, and probably I think I'll hold them off until the applicant. But how long this particular restaurant has been closed for quite some time? Do we know how long it's been closed? Because I drive by there frequently, and there's no cars out in front or anything like that during the day and evening. So, how long has this been not open to the public?
Chairman, the applicant could better answer that question, but they have been pretty much closed for the last couple of months due to COVID. But Veronica Salcedo is present. She could better answer that question for you.
Okay, that's fair. I'll take that. All right. Any other questions of staff or Jerry at this point in time? If not, Madam Secretary, have we received any written communication at this point?
We have not received any written communication on this item.
Okay. With hearing no written communication, we'll move on to the public hearing. The public hearing is now open. Would the applicant like to speak on this matter? Please identify yourself.
Veronica, you are muted. You may unmute. There you go. Go ahead.
But I speak a little English. Somebody speak Spanish to translate.
Jerry?
Do we have?
Yes. Jerry Guevara will translate.
Okay.
Verónica, you would traducir sus palabras.
Ok, muchas gracias.
Puede comenzar cuando quiera.
Ok, ¿qué es lo que me está preguntando, señor?
Le está preguntando que si se puede representar usted, como decir su nombre y cuántos años tiene en ese negocio.
Ok, sí, claro. Me llamo Verónica Caicedo y tengo 5 años ya con ese negocio. El negocio tiene ya poquito más de 2 años cerrado.
Her name is Veronica Salcedo, and she's been operating the business for over 5 years now, and it has been closed for the last 2 years.
Okay. Go ahead. She can. Does Veronica want to speak anymore? It's your.
Verónica, ¿quieres decir otras palabras o es todo?
Ok, sí, pues la razón por la que estoy aplicando para la licencia del alcohol y pidiendo las horas extras, pues es porque pues yo debo mucho dinero ya en este lugar también por no estar operándolo. Ya quiero trabajar bien y pues quiero a ver si se me puede dar pues la oportunidad de poder tener la licencia para poder operar bien. Va a haber muchos cuidados en el lugar, entonces espero que nos den la oportunidad.
Jerry?
She wants to open for after hours in order to expand the services to the community, and this will help her her business financially.
Okay. Anything else?
That was it, Chairman.
Okay. Do any of the commissioners have any questions of the applicant at this point in time? We'll start with Commissioner Alderete.
Yeah, so it'd be nice to know why 2 years, I can understand it's been difficult to operate a restaurant. But that's, I guess my question is to her is if she intends to sell the restaurant in the next year. It just seems like not operating for 2 years is difficult enough, and then you're gonna add this condition and then it's kind of magically open. And I'm wondering, something just in my head doesn't matter.
Okay. Jerry?
Verónica, uno de los consejeros está preguntando que si va a vender el negocio.
No, pienso quedarme con el negocio.
¿En el próximo año o no?
No pienso vender el lugar.
Ok, gracias.
And then her response to Commissioner Alderete was that she's not going to sell the business.
Okay. Commissioner Alderete, anything
Yeah,
else?
that's it.
Okay, Commissioner Calderon.
Sure. Can I say it in Spanish or does that have to be in English?
You can say it in Spanish or English. You do what you want. Just make sure we translate it to English.
Sure. Alrighty, sounds good. Well, I guess I'm just gonna ask her like what her goals are for the restaurant. So, señora Verónica, ¿cuáles son sus metas para el restaurante dentro de los próximos años que vienen?
Lo que pasa, soy mamá soltera, soy mamá de 3 hijos, y pues yo lo que quiero ya es montar mi negocio, ya para un mejor porvenir para mi familia, mis hijos. Yo siempre me ha gustado, todo el tiempo he trabajado en restaurantes y pues siempre me ha gustado ese ambiente. Entonces pienso hacer de ese lugar algo bueno, algo grande. La verdad tengo ideas buenas para ese lugar, entonces pues quiero comenzar.
Okay. So, do you want me to translate it or does someone else got it? Because I can translate it. She's basically saying that she's a single mom and she wants all the support that she can so she can make this business succeed. My follow-up question is going to be, you know, what her what is her support. So, ¿cuál es el apoyo que usted tiene ahorita?
El apoyo, ¿en qué sentido? ¿Moral, económico?
Económico. So
Económico.
so just to clarify, I'm asking her like what economic support she has right now.
Right.
Ok, ahorita, pues, mis ahorros, ahorita lo poco que tengo, pues, es puros ahorros de mi trabajo, y el tiempo que trabajamos con el restaurante que estuvo abierto. Entonces, con esto, quiero darle, pues, para adelante.
Okay.
Commissioner Calderon, any?
No, yeah, sorry. I was hoping somebody was going to chance it, but no. Yeah, she just basically wants to help her business succeed. She wants to be well off. That is the main reason. I have no further questions right now. No tengo ahorita más preguntas para usted. Gracias.
Gracias.
Thank you, Commissioner Calderon. We're going to go to Vice Chair Morrissey.
I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Fan.
Thank you. I was wondering if the applicant could share with us a little bit more on the reasoning behind wanting to have extended hours all throughout the week. I guess some of the previous CUPs that we've discussed, extended hours kind of have been relegated to the weekends to anticipate additional customers on the weekends. I'm wondering what's the motivation behind Monday through Sunday.
Verónica, el consejero le está preguntando qué son las horas que va a proponer y por qué quiere tener horas extendidas hasta las 12 a.m. durante la semana.
Lo que pasa es que entonces pues está diseñado como un sports bar y pues se necesitan las horas pues para poder pues sí, llevar el negocio y que salga pues económicamente.
Jerry?
Commissioners, her comment was that the hours, the reasoning for the hours is for it to make financially and economically sense for them.
Say
And
that again. Jerry? Jerry?
Yes, Chairman.
Could you repeat that?
Her response to the commissioner's comment was, in order for the business to be financially stable for them, that's why they're proposing those hours.
Okay.
And then Jerry, could I ask one more question?
Yeah.
How important is it? I'm not sure. I might misread the presentation, but are we is the applicant asking to serve alcohol to the extended time throughout the week? Because there's been a CUP approved in 93.
Commissioner, that is correct. If the condition is approved, then the applicant will be allowed to sell alcohol up to 2 a.m.
And then can I ask the applicant how she feels if the commission approved extended hours, but not the extended hours to serve alcohol? Would that affect her business?
Verónica, el consejero le está preguntando si está disponible de nomás vender alcohol hasta las 12 y abrir el negocio hasta las 2. Y si es posible o no es posible, y si no es posible, ¿por qué no está de acuerdo de eso?
Okay. Como te comentaba anteriormente, es que ese es un sports bar, entonces pues empieza la tarde, ¿sí me explico? Como para las bebidas, para todo eso, empieza a las 9, 10 de la noche es cuando empieza cuando empiezan las ventas. Estoy pidiendo las horas.
Commissioners, her request is to open to 2 a.m. Since it is the sports bar, most of her clientele do come in later on in the evening, like around 9 p.m., and they do stay there till midnight, so her intent is to operate till 2 a.m.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Wu.
I want to ask the applicant to help me to better understand her business. And my question regards, you've been closed for 2 months or so. What was the nature of that closure?
Alan, just for clarification, it was 2
Okay.
years. She's been shut down for two years.
Okay, I'm sorry. That's even worse. Well, you've been shut down for 2 years. Okay, now you're starting up, and your business model is to incur additional costs by opening later, which means that either your staff have to get overtime, or you have a second shift coming in for the evening, but you're actually incurring more costs operating until a later hour. I just don't get it.
Verónica, el consejero le está preguntando por qué está cerrado de más de 2 años y por qué quiere abrir hasta las 2 a.m. si va a tener que pagar más a sus empleados. ¿Cómo va a hacer eso sentido económicamente para usted?
Ok. Estoy cerrada desde más de 2 años porque cuando compré ese negocio, el negocio venía con la licencia del alcohol y la persona que me vendió, al final, pues se puede decir que me robó y se quedó con la licencia. No me quiso firmar los papeles para poder traspasar la licencia a mi nombre. Entonces, como me quedé sin licencia de alcohol, por eso es que tuve que cerrar.
Commissioner Wu, her response, basically, she's been closed for the last 2 years because she had some legal issues that she needed to resolve with the prior business owner.
Okay.
There's a lot more to that.
Yeah, there's more. She basically just stated that she added that, like, basically the previous owner, it was a quote unquote agreement that she was gonna be receiving the liquor license, but I guess when they did the transaction, the previous owner took that license with him and didn't give it to her. So that's why she's requesting this this liquor license right now, so she can be active as a sports bar. That's kind of where she's coming from.
Thank you, Miguel.
And has she ever operated a sports bar? And what is the age of her clientele?
Hopefully over 21.
Verónica, la otra pregunta es, le están preguntando de qué es la edad de sus clientes.
¿Qué es qué, perdón?
La edad de sus clientes.
Pues es que la verdad del lugar, tenemos clientes desde los 24 años hasta los, tenemos clientes ahí que iban, parejas de 60 años, 35, o sea, tenemos de toda clase de edades, no tenemos algo preciso, o sea, de todas las edades han ido.
Commissioners, her response is that the age group varies from ages, so there's not an exact number in terms of the range for her customers. Commissioners, I do want to clarify that the CUP that's currently in place that was approved in 1993 runs with the land. So even if the ABC license was sold to someone else, the CUP that's currently in place still is applicable in this case.
Dan, I have a question for our legal counsel. Should there be a litigation over a business deal and transaction because sounds like someone did not fulfill their obligation under the terms of their sale? How does this impact our decision here, or does it?
Commissioner Wu, thanks for your question. It will likely have no impact. And to the extent there is an impact, part of our CUPs, as you may know, each CUP does contain an indemnification clause obligating the applicant to indemnify the city for any action that may arise from the city's approval of the CUP.
And it sounds like this is not an ongoing business. This is a new business under an existing CPUC for that space. But this owner is new, right? Or did I get that wrong? And been trying to get the business going for the last 2 years.
That sounds like what might be the case, but certainly, feel free to ask the applicant to clarify that. But it is hard to opine completely on your question at the same time, because without having all the facts in front of us, we know them as certainly as they're being explained to us by the applicant.
Yeah, I was asking the applicant. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me.
Yeah.
Commissioner Wu, the applicant, like I mentioned earlier, has been the operator since 2016, which was at that time under a different business name, which was known as Chili's and Beer.
No more question.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Wu. I've got a couple things for just clarification. So just on your point you just made a second ago, Jerry, the applicant has been in ownership of this property since 2016. We're in 2021. So essentially she's had it for 4 to 5 years to begin with. She was shut down for 2 years. I know that there's been the previous restaurant bars that have been in there have all been sports bars in one form or another. Here's a couple of my concerns that I have is that this is an establishment that's relatively close to single-family homes, and the back of the parking lot butts up against the parking garage for apartments. I know staff has mentioned that the parking lot is somewhat of a buffer for the noise from the establishment to the neighborhood, but at the same time, the parking lot, in my book, can be a challenge. People coming out of the bar restaurant at 1 o'clock in the morning aren't necessarily going to be the most quiet people. Vast majority of the parking is in the back of the building, not in the front of the building. The front of the building has very limited parking. And I asked staff of a couple of other establishments. Unfortunately, one of them is in the area previously designated as part of the county land, so there's no way we can check on that. But there are several other restaurants and bars along Hudson Avenue. Just down the street is a place called the Fling, and I'm curious as to what the hours of operation for that particular establishment is, because it's similar in nature to the restaurant and bar that we're talking about here. I also am concerned that the 8-foot wall or 7-foot wall may not necessarily abate the noise as much as we would like to see that. So my question is there any other kind of abatement that we can establish at this point in time to not impact the people surrounding the area? The Fling, which is down not far from this restaurant, butts up against an apartment complex, but they don't have entertainment, just as this place won't have live entertainment, but it will have entertainment through the sports events that are going to be shown throughout the restaurant. So what measures are going to be taken, shall we say, after hours to make sure that this is not a noisy establishment in a residential area?
Chairman, staff does also share those concerns that you indicated, and that was the reason for why we added condition number 12, requiring the review of this application 6 months from the issuance or exercising the resolution. In addition, just to clarify, in terms of after-hours operations, you're right. There's not another business within the general vicinity that operates after hours besides the brand new Starbucks that opened at the intersection of Santa Clara and Tustin Avenue. We do have a couple of restaurants.
Yeah, and we approved, just for sake of discussion, at the opposite end of this particular strip mall, we approved the gas station to be a 24-hour gas station, but in that particular location, there was no residential at all. other than I believe it was a nursery school.
That is correct, Chairman.
So,
So the commission, I believe one of the commissioners mentioned maybe reducing the hours of operation during the week. That can maybe satisfy some of those concerns with regards to preserve the weekend noise, and then maybe allowing during the weekends for increased hours.
okay, that's a discussion we can have. All right. Those are all my questions at this point in time. And once again, we'll bring it back to the applicant. Is there anything else that the applicant would like to say at this point in time?
Verónica, el consejero está preguntando si tiene otras preguntas o palabras que decir.
Sí. Con referente a lo del restaurante, vamos a tener mucho de que todo esto calma los estacionamientos de atrás que dan a los apartamentos. Vamos a tratar la seguridad, entonces no va a haber nada de problemas y me dan la oportunidad de tener esa licencia hasta las 2 de la mañana. No va a haber ningún...
Verónica, ¿puede repetir otra vez? Porque no pudimos vivirla bien.
Ok. Comento que si me dan la oportunidad de la licencia de las after hours, hasta las 2 de la mañana vamos a tener seguridad y nos vamos a encargar de que no haya problemas en los estacionamientos, que no haya basura, que no haya gente gritando, música alta, o sea, nada de eso. Eso nos estamos encargando ya ahorita para que no haya ningún tipo de problemas para los apartamentos que están atrás de con nosotros.
Commissioners, she did want to mention that if granted the CUP, they are going to be increasing their security, as well as making sure that they keep the property well maintained and not disturb the residential community to the west.
Okay, and that's a good thing, and I'm glad she brought that up. To that extent, improving the security, what are we speaking of at this point in time? Are we talking about the fact, here again, this is something that we could dictate to certain extents that says from 9 until 2 o'clock in the morning, there'll be somebody in the parking lot to from a security point of view. What kind of security are we referencing at this point?
Verónica, le está preguntando el concilio si cuando dijo que va a mejorar la seguridad, ¿qué significó cuando dijo eso?
Ok, lo que pasa que antes de que yo comprara este lugar, el lugar era un lugar donde hacían, ¿cómo se llama? ¿Cómo se llama? Pura música, no me acuerdo cómo se llama esa música, donde tenían, pues, la verdad eran muchas gangas lo que estaban ahí cuando yo entré en ese negocio, entonces poquito a poquito empezamos a sacar ese tipo de gente y era la gente que había y hacía los problemas ahí atrás. Entonces, nosotros lo que queremos es algo más tranquilo, por eso es que estoy viendo lo de los securities, para que ellos sean los que, pues sí, retiren a la gente en cuanto terminen de salir del lugar, para que toda la gente se vaya y no tenga que haber nadie en los estacionamientos después de las 2 de la mañana.
¿Los security guards van a ser nuevos y de qué horas dijo?
Sí, pues lo vamos a tener toda la noche mientras estemos en los eventos con el lugar.
Commissioner, she said that she's basically kind of rebranding her business. So she is basically targeting a different population. Prior to her occupying or obtaining this business, the customers that were attending were a bit of a rowdier crowd. So her goal is basically to try to move away from that type of crowd. And in addition to that, she is proposing to hire security guards during the evening to midnight.
Okay, and
Or past midnight, sorry.
repeat that, sorry.
Commissioner, she's planning on having security guards from basically 9 p.m. till 2 a.m. if the CUP is granted.
Okay, is that Is that in the stipulations that we've put forth?
Chairman, we did not condition the project to require a security guard on site.
Okay. All right. Okay, Commissioner Alderete, do you have any questions of the applicant at this point in time?
No, I do not.
Commissioner Calderon?
I do not.
Commissioner, Vice Chair Morrissey?
And no questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Fan?
No questions.
Commissioner Wu?
I have a question, staff. Does this tie, what if their type of entertainment changes? Does this come back for review?
Commissioner Wu, any proposed live entertainment will require a live entertainment permit, and it's not subject to the Planning Commission's approval. It's done usually administratively.
So they could have a liquor license, but the type of entertainment they offer in addition to their meal and alcohol could change.
That is correct, and it'll be subject to our live entertainment regulations.
Jerry, one question I have is, what is the start time for this again?
The proposed start time is 11 a.m. To 2 a.m.
Okay, and it's been, because I mean, I would have thought of as a sports bar with soccer and things like that, you know, having seen what goes on with some of the other restaurants and bars around the city that have, you know, soccer matches at 6 in the morning and 7 in the morning. I was wondering whether or not that would be an option that they're looking at this point in time, but they're not. They're looking at 11 o'clock start time.
That is correct, Chairman.
Okay. All right. With that said, since there's no further comments from the applicant and the commission, we will close the public hearing and we'll bring it back to the commission for discussion. Would anybody at this point in time like to make
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yes.
This is Sarah Bernal. Can we please go back and ask for public comments from the public?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Did not. All right. Do we have anybody at this point in time that would like to speak on this item?
If you'd like to speak on this item, please select the hand icon if you're participating via Zoom, or if you're calling in, please dial *9 now. We'll wait a few seconds to see if we have anyone that'd like to speak. We're going to wait about 20 seconds. Okay, we do not have any speakers.
Okay, hearing none, the public hearing on this matter will be closed at this time, and we'll go back to the commission for final discussion. Do any commissioners have any questions, or would they like to make a motion at this point in time? Commissioner Alderete?
I'm not ready to make a motion, although I'll open it up for discussion. I like Commissioner Pham's idea. I think it was his idea of opening it up for late night on thinking Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and also requiring security as part of that. Part of what I'm struggling with is we've got a business that's been closed for 2 years, and we don't really have a long record of operation, and this is a business use at night, late at night, that's relatively close to homes and apartments. And I'm trying to think of a way to help the applicant but giving the city sort of the necessary tools it needs, that if the applicant doesn't follow the rules, that then we'll revisit this in like 6 months. So I'm not being that articulate about where I want to go, but I did like the idea of trying to limit it instead of a 7-day until 2 in the morning. That just seems excessive. So I'm not making a motion. I just thought I'd open it up for discussion.
That's fine. Okay. Commissioner Calderon?
I just want to echo what Commissioner Aldereta just mentioned. I am also, excuse me, I'm also in favor of like probably having the business operate till 2 a.m. Thursday through Saturday, just because those are like the days where, you know, prime events happen. And then also just increasing the security, especially since like, you know, there's residences behind the building, and then also having a large amount of like parking spaces in the back. And we just, you know, like there's history, you know, and with this type of businesses. And, you know, I just wouldn't want something dangerous to happen in the homes that are in the back, you know? So, yeah, I'm not making a motion right now. I still want to hear what everybody else says, but if we all come to a consensus, you know, I'm throwing it out there. It's just same thing that Commissioner Alderete and I believe it was Commissioner Wu who mentioned about the Thursday through Saturday at 2 a.m. and then other nights maybe end at midnight. Just a thought.
Okay,
I'd like to know what you guys think. Thanks.
fair enough. Vice Chair Morrissey?
Yes, yeah, I agree with the previous commissioners, Alderete and Calderon. You know, I think it's important to limit the hours just because of the track record the business has, and provide security. I think that's a great idea. I think it should be a licensed security service. We should stipulate that. But you know, I really hope this applicant is successful. I, you know, want to do what we can to help our business be successful. So I think those are all good ideas.
Okay. Commissioner Fan?
Yes, I think I'm in agreement with everything that's said so far. And plus, I think with the limited hours during the weekday, there's always an option because the CUP has a review period. So if I think after the review period's done and the business operation is normal, and I think staff can always have the ability to increase the hours if they see fit. But as for right now, I would encourage to limit the hours during the weekday. That's all.
Okay. Commissioner Wu?
Based on the applicant's answers, I would agree with Commissioner Pham, and I personally do not understand the business model, but I think reduced hour will reduce reliability. Having those hours is expensive payroll.
Okay. Basically, I support everything that was said here by each and every one of the commissioners. I think just to recap, to make sure I understand what we've got, obviously the first thing is to reduce the hours of operation after midnight from Monday through Saturday to Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We talked about security from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. or 2 a.m. And that was not included in the recommendations by staff. And we did have a 6-month review. Now, my question on the 6-month review is, should there be no issues with police or any other issues, complaints or anything of that nature, do we agree that the applicant would then after the 6-month review would have the ability to have Monday through Saturday hours from up until 2 a.m.? Or is there some other time frame we want to set that for? Any comments?
I think that's
Yeah.
a good idea. Sorry, if I interrupted anybody. I think I like that idea just because things are starting to open up right now, COVID, so I can definitely see some activity happening in the next couple of months if it is approved. And then I don't know, I guess it'll just give us like a good idea of like where her business can go. But I do have a question though.
Go ahead.
If she were to, I know she mentioned that she's not going to sell it, right? But if she does the liquor license stay with the restaurant or she keeps it? Stay with, yeah.
Min?
Commissioner, this is Mintai. So the the conditional use permit that the city issues runs with the land. The alcohol business permit issued through ABC is issued to the entity or the person, so that person can either decide whether they would want to do a person-to-person transfer, or they could potentially reassign it to someone else. They don't have to necessarily sell it with the business. Because this business does have a full liquor license, it's different than a beer and wine. I'm sure it's more challenging at ABC to receive. So there's some value in that.
Got it.
But it does run with the business entity that owns it and not the business on the property.
Got it. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Any other comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Alderetti?
No.
Yeah, actually, I have one.
Commissioner Morris or Vice Chair Morrissey?
Yeah, I was wondering, we have a 6-month review period, but if she doesn't commence operations for, I don't know how long it's going to take her to get the lot restriped and do all the work that's necessary to get up and running. When does that clock start ticking in the 6 months?
We could start the clock the moment that she starts to open for business. We want to make sure that there's 6 months of operations rather than a 6 months immediately after the approval. So our condition could be worded in that way to clarify, but the intent is that 6 months after she starts opening the business.
Okay, Tom, you good with that?
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Commissioner Fan? Commissioner Wu?
Yeah. I just have one thought. This is just for consideration. Instead of stipulating the reduction in hours now, because I think that what we're trying to do is gauge whether or not the proposed use is appropriate to the location. Potentially, this is my suggestion, is that we allow the use as described in the CUP for the next 6 months, and then if operations is acceptable, then we don't limit the hours. But if operating to 2 o'clock in the morning every day becomes a nuisance to the community at large, then at least we have a reason to limit the hours without penalizing the applicant with speculation. And I think either way it works in terms of a check, but just my thoughts on at least if we allow the applicants to operate fully for the next 6 months, we know that we're going to have a review 6 months later anyways, and if there are any complaints within those 6 months, then we have factual evidence of the reasoning why we should limit the hours, and we can be harsher on the hours too if we feel that it's necessary based on the number of complaints and the volume. Yeah, that's it. Just a thought.
Okay. Any other comments by any of the commissioners? Okay, hearing none. Have we a motion at this time for this item? No motion.
I would like to motion the approval of CUP. I'd like to motion for the approval of CUP 2021-06 with the added with the added conditions that after a 6-month review, staff or the commission has the ability to limit hours of operations as they see fit upon the 6-month review,
Okay,
as well as the applicant needs to hire a licensed security from 9 to 2 a.m.
okay. Do we have a second to that motion or any friendly amendment?
Yeah, can I make a recommendation, a friendly amendment, I suppose?
Sure, Tom.
You know, do I understand they're asking for business hours from 11 a.m. to 2 a.m. daily? So that includes Sunday? That's every day?
Every day.
Okay. Can we say Monday to Saturday, 11 to 2, and then Sunday, 10 p.m.
Well, technically
Commissioner
speaking-
Sam, do you accept that friendly amendment?
If I can, at least to comment on Sunday, if staff can provide me with some information, but currently the code allows the restaurant and businesses to stay open to midnight, right? So even on Sunday, we really shouldn't be looking at condition that's more restricted than what the
Okay.
codes would allow, Chair.
I'll change that to midnight.
Any other comments? Or a second or an amendment to this?
Can someone
guess
restate
that-
the motion?
Yeah,
Sure.
I want to clarify. What I'm putting forth is that I think that we should approve the CUP as proposed by staff, knowing that we have a 6-month review process coming up, and then after that 6-month review, we have the option, or staff has the option of limiting the hours based on the property performance. This is different from what we've discussed before. That's what I would like to motion. If the other commissioners would like to revert back to the original discussion of limiting the hours now, and then restoring the hours as they see fit after 6 months, then I would revoke my motion. I just need to know what the rest of the commission would want to do.
Well, let's do this. First of all, the question was to repeat what's already been stated at this point in time. So Madam Secretary, would you please state the motion?
Sure. So I have a motion by Commissioner Pham to approve as recommended by staff, with an added condition that after 6-month review, staff has the ability to limit the hours of operation if necessary, and also for the applicant to hire a licensed security guard from 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. Commissioner, and just for the record, Commissioner Morrissey introduced a friendly amendment to limit hours of operation from Thursday through Saturday until 2 a.m. and then Sunday through Wednesday until midnight. And from what I'm hearing, Commissioner Pham did not accept that friendly amendment. So what we can do at this point, if we have a second for Commissioner Pham's motion, we can take a vote, and then if that passes, we move on. If it does not, then we can consider Commissioner Morrissey, however you'd like to proceed, Chair.
Okay. Is there a second to Commissioner Pham's motion?
You guys are not making this easy. That's tough.
That's why you get paid the big bucks, Miguel.
Can I add another?
You
Can I
do-
add another motion to it?
You can do whatever you want to do. I mean,
Honestly, I'm just thinking security wise. I'll be honest with you. Just for the safety of everybody. I know that we mentioned that we're adding security to it, but honestly, just because it's a hidden spot, residents 7 feet. In my opinion, I'm a tall guy, but I just feel like it's not that high. Can we add a friendly motion in there to install safety cameras? Is that something I can say?
You can request it.
I would like to request that to Commissioner Pham's request, and if approved, I will second it.
Okay.
Commissioner Pham, do you accept that friendly amendment?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a motion by Commissioner Pham and a second by Commissioner Calderon. And then just for the record, to repeat, the conditions that we're voting on are after a 6-month review, staff will review, and after a 6-month review, staff and the commission has the ability to limit the hours of operation if needed. Applicant will hire a licensed security guard from 9 p.m. to 2 p.m. And then also the applicant will install security cameras.
In the back.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Sorry, in the back, like to facing the,
In the back.
the parking lot in the back
building.
to the houses. Yes.
This
Also, I'd like to
Min.
clarify. Oh, okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, go ahead.
I just want to clarify that I think we should have security cameras and the security guards at the commencement of the business, not 6 months after, but the 6 months after review is mainly for the hours of operation. But I do think we should have security guards and security cameras once the business commences.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have noted that in the conditions.
I just want to get, if you can provide clarification on the 6 months review, is that if the business is operating lawfully and have no nuisance impact, it can continue to operate as approved. But if there are nuisance impacts such as noise complaint or other police incidents report or code enforcement, that will be the basis for staff's review and determination on the hours. So that will provide us with the clarity as to how the staff review will take place.
Yes, that's what I had in mind. I didn't want to penalize the applicant before we know how she will operate her business, but I want it to be on the table that if the business isn't operating, kind of the reason why we would want to limit hours if there's noise complaints or if there are complaints with the police department, that we have the option to limit her hours.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me ask one question, Min. After the 6 months is up and there's been a review by code enforcement, I'm assuming, and a review by staff, and it turns out that there is no, there might be some reason to change the time frame, the hours of operation, et cetera. That is something that will be established by staff.
That's what the commissioner is proposing in his motion right now.
Right. So staff will take whatever action needs to be taken at this point in time.
Correct.
And the commission is not involved in that process at all.
Not based on the current motion.
Gotcha. Okay.
Commissioners, this is Ali. Just out of sensitivity for the applicant, since English is not her native language, it might be wise for us to ask if she understands the condition and agrees to it.
Good point, Ali. You want
So
to ask
Jerry
her
will
that?
translate back. It'll just take a moment. Thank you.
Verónica, el concilio está proponiendo nuevas condiciones. La primera viene siendo que va a que contratar a un security guard que tenga licencia durante las horas de 9 p.m. a 12 a.m. El permiso va a ser renovado o revisarlo por el Departamento de Planning en 6 meses. Y el tercer condición es que va a necesitar instalar cámaras de seguridad enfrente de, atrás del el restaurante. ¿Está de acuerdo de estas condiciones extra?
Sí, está bien.
Commissioner, she's not opposed to those additional conditions of approval.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Jerry, for the translation. All right, so we have.
I have another
a
question.
motion. Go ahead. Thank you.
So the security system, is that an approved system by staff? Or is that something that's reviewed by staff?
That is generally reviewed by our police department and reviewed by our police department.
Okay,
And I believe the security guard condition was a licensed security guard, so
Right.
we took note of that.
just wondering about the actual camera system.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good question. Thank you, Vice Chair. Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second with friendly amendments.
A call for the question.
Okay,
Okay, so I will go ahead and,
please repeat, yes.
okay, so the Commissioner Pham introduced a motion to approve with a 6-month review by staff. If there are any nuisance complaints or that staff receives, then we will have the ability to limit the hours of operation if needed. In addition, security from 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. and security cameras installed in the rear of the building will need to be implemented as soon as the business opens. We do have a second by Commissioner Calderon.
Okay. With that, Madam Secretary, please take a roll call vote.
Okay, roll call vote. Commissioner Alderete.
Yes.
Commissioner Calderon.
Aye.
Vice Chair Morrissey.
Aye.
Commissioner Pham.
Aye.
Commissioner Wu.
Aye.
Chair McLaughlin.
Aye.
Motion passes by a majority vote with Commissioner Ramos abstaining.
Okay, thank you, everybody, for that, and thank you to the applicant, and good luck with your new hours of operation and your new restaurant.
Buena
Thank you very
suerte.
much. Okay. With that, we'll move on to item number 2. This is the time and place for a public hearing on item number 2. The property is located at 305 East 4th Street, Unit 200. Please note the decision on this matter is final unless appealed within 10 days by any interested individual or party. Before we begin, do any of the commissioners have anything they wish to disclose with regards to this item? Commissioner Alderete,
I have none.
Commissioner Calderon,
Nothing to disclose.
Commissioner Morrissey, or
No
Vice Chair Morrissey,
disclosures.
Commissioner Fan,
Nothing to disclose.
Commissioner Ramos,
No disclosures.
Commissioner Wu.
No.
I have no disclosures. We'll move on at this point in time. Jerry, go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. This next item is a request to modify an existing CUP by the business owner Johnson Sanchez to allow the sale of distilled spirits in conjunction to beer and wine at Native Sun Ale House, located at 305 East 4th Street, Unit 200, and also located within Ward 5. Staff is recommending approval of the modification as conditioned. Moving on to the next slide. As mentioned, the restaurant is located at 305 East 4th Street, Unit 200, which is on the second floor of the subject building. The restaurant is indicated in red, as shown on the aerial. It's surrounded by other commercial uses to the south and west. To the north is the city-owned parking structure, and to the east is the Calle Cuatro Plaza. The subject site has a general plan land use destination as district center, and it falls within the city's transit zoning code, or SB 84. The lot is approximately 0.48 acres in size, and the unit is 1,720 square feet in size. Moving on to the next slide. This is just the image of the subject restaurant. As indicated, it's located on the second floor. Just some background. The restaurant has been occupying an existing 1,700 square foot tenant space. In addition, they also occupy a 1,200 square foot outdoor patio area, which can in total accommodate up to 284 patrons. Native Sun has been operating the subject site since 2016. In 2016, the Planning Commission approved various conditional use permits, which allow the sale of beer and wine, also allow for extended hours of operation, and banquet services. Currently, the business does operate Monday through Thursday from 3 p.m. to 12 a.m., Fridays from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m., Saturdays from 11 a.m. to 2 a.m., and Sundays from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Moving on to the next slide. This is a site plan Celeste. As indicated, it is located on the second floor of the subject building. And then you do have a outdoor patio that faces the street. And then to the right, you have the current layout of the existing business with the red rectangle displaying the current alcohol display of storage. Nothing is being changed in terms of the interior for the project. Moving on to the next slide. As indicated, the applicant is requesting a modification to basically allow the sale of distilled spirits in addition to the sale of beer and wine that they currently have. No changes to alcohol storage or placement. In addition, the restaurant is not located within any sensitive land uses. As part of staff review, the police department did analyze this modification and does not have any issues with granting the CUP. Conditions of approval, as well as property maintenance agreement and standards in the Santa Ana Municipal Code, will address any potential impacts associated to this change. Pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act, the proposed changes are categorically exempt pursuant to Section 15301 of the CEQA guidelines, and an environmental review will be filed with the county for this project. There's no physical impact associated to this project. And with that, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution approving conditional use permit number 2013-15 modification number 1 as conditioned. With that, that concludes staff presentation. I'm here to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Jerry. Commissioner Alderete, do you have any questions of Jerry and staff?
I do not.
Commissioner Calderon?
No questions.
Vice Chair Morrissey?
Yes, I do have a question regarding outdoor noise. What are the limitations on any sort of amplified music or live music for that establishment?
Vice Chairman, for live entertainment or amplified music, the establishment does require to have a live entertainment permit, which they do not have at the moment. But in terms of noise levels, I believe the Santa Ana Municipal Code is about 60 decibel points to 50. 60 for commercial establishments.
Okay. No further questions.
Okay. Commissioner Fan?
No questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Ramos?
I do have one question. So I'm going through the staff report, and the staff report reads that the nearest sensitive land use is a religious institution 200 feet away. And then it reads that the granting the CUP will not negatively impact any sensitive land uses that may be nearby. So I'm wondering if there's any actions that the applicant is being directed to take to mitigate any impact, or what is staff seeing as the reason why there wouldn't be an impact with an institution that close in proximity?
Thank you, Commissioner Ramos. So the current native zone outhouse has been established there since 2016, and it was actually established prior to the place of worship that was mentioned on the staff report. In addition to that, the place of worship is actually across the street and a couple of businesses away. So there's different barriers that will mitigate any noise issues or other activities. In addition to that, staff feels that the conditions of approval that are being implemented would satisfy or mitigate any concerns from this additional activity. We have also conditions of approval. Condition number 3 is basically stating that the applicant adopt a good neighborhood policy. So hopefully that will further mitigate any issues.
Thank you. I just wanted further explanation on the reasoning behind that statement.
Okay. Any other questions, Commissioner Ramos?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Commissioner Wu?
No questions.
I do not have any questions at this point in time. Jerry, thank you. Thank you, staff. Madam Secretary, have we received any written communication on this item?
We have not received any communication.
Thank you. With that said, the public hearing is now open. Would the applicant like to speak on this matter? Is the applicant here?
I am here.
Okay.
Hello, commissioners. This is Jonathan Sanchez. Thank you for considering our CUP modification. I appreciate sitting through these meetings. Sometimes they are many years since we've sat through them, and I appreciate after listening to the last discussion, how much you guys care for and monitor our city. Just a little to bring to life a little bit, bring color to the last, the staff's presentation. We many years ago transformed a office space on the second floor of 305 East 4th Street into a full service restaurant with a rooftop patio. We have been able to thrive and start a second location since that time. We were able to use that outdoor space on the second floor to navigate through the challenges of the last year with COVID. Our second location that we started in Rancho Cucamonga was our first foray into having a full liquor license. And we started that in October of 2019. So we use that as a test bed of starting and learning how to own and operate a high-end cocktail bar with craft beer like we had in Santa Ana with our beer and wine license for 305 East 4th Street. And we have decided to move that model back to our first location here. In December of last year, we had the opportunity to purchase a full liquor license that, as we went through that process, just so happened to be owned previously by Velvet Lounge on 4th Street, just down the way from us a few blocks. So keep in mind that this liquor license is not coming from outside of town, it's coming from inside of town. So us surrendering our beer and wine license and buying Velvet's full liquor license actually decreases the number of alcohol licenses in downtown Santa Ana. In our experience with running our full liquor bar in Rancho Cucamonga, we have kind of understood how to properly manage and run and delight customers in that setting. And so we have already made changes to our staffing in Santa Ana. So we in the past and ongoing have partnered with Santa Ana PD to have our staff go through what's called TIPS training. And TIPS training is a process that we were informed many years ago by Santa Ana PD that would help our staff understand how to properly serve alcohol to guests, how to make sure they do not overserve anyone, but even more so, how to interact with people that need to be kind of reined in from alcohol use or over ordering, so as to maintain just good nature within our city. So we made sure that all our staff is TIPS trained. We also, in the past, have had doormen, but we've realized that there's potential with a full liquor license to need more than doormen. So we've taken our 5 doormen and paid for them to be guard card trained. So they are now trained as security professionals like any licensed security company. With that being said, thank you so much for your consideration. We hope to be a place in Santa Ana that shows forth how great our city is. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Does any of the commissioners have any questions of the applicant? Commissioner Alderete?
I have none.
Okay, Commissioner Calderon?
No questions.
Vice Chair Morrissey?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Fan?
Yeah, no questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Ramos?
No questions.
Commissioner Wu?
No questions.
Okay, thank you very much, John. I have no questions myself. We will now move on and take any telephone comments that we have from the public on this item. Madam Secretary, do we have any members of the public that would like to comment at this time?
If you'd like to comment on this item, please select the hand icon if you're participating via Zoom, or if you're calling in by phone, please press *9. We'll wait about 20 seconds to see if we have any callers or speakers. Okay, we don't have any speakers on this item.
Okay, thank you. Since we didn't have any comments from the commissioners and we haven't had any comments from the public, does the applicant like to would they wish to make any other last-minute comments?
No, thank you.
Okay. Public hearing is now closed. We'll bring it back to the commission for final disposition.
I'd like to make a motion, Chairman.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Wu.
I'd like to adopt a resolution approving CPUC number 2013-15-mod 1 as condition.
Okay,
I'll
thank you.
second.
And that was who?
Calderon, I'll second.
Calderon. Thank you, Miguel. So second by Commissioner Calderon. Any other comments at this point in time? Hearing none. Madam Secretary, please do a roll call vote.
Thank you. Commissioner Alderete?
Yes.
Commissioner Calderon?
Aye.
Vice Chair Morrissey?
Aye.
Commissioner Pham?
Aye.
Commissioner Ramos?
Aye.
Commissioner Wu?
Aye.
Chair McLaughlin?
Aye.
Motion passes by unanimous consent.
Okay, John, good luck. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll move on.
Thank you, commissioners.
All right. Have a good evening. This is the time and place for the public hearing on item number 3 for the property located at 3950 South Bristol Street. Please note, decision on this matter is final unless appealed within 10 days by any interested individual or party. Before we begin, do any of the commissioners have anything that they wish to disclose with regards to this item? Commissioner Alderete?
No disclosure.
Commissioner Calderon?
Nothing to disclose.
Vice Chair Morrissey?
No disclosures.
Commissioner Fan?
Nothing to disclose.
Commissioner Ramos,
No disclosures.
Commissioner Wu.
No disclosure.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any disclosures. With that, Ivan, your turn to present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. As you stated, this is a conditional use permit application for Euro Cafe, CUP number 2021-4. The applicant, Samuel Rees, business owner for Euro Cafe, is requesting approval of the conditional use permit in order for the allowance of on-premise beer and wine in conjunction with an existing restaurant. And as indicated on the slide here, the staff recommendation is to adopt the resolution approving conditional use permit number 2021-4 as conditioned. On the next slide here for location and zoning, as you can see, it's a pretty large integrated shopping center. The general plan land use designation is district center with the zoning designation of commercial residential. The majority of the surrounding land uses is retail with restaurant. And to the south, we have the City of Costa Mesa South Coast Plaza. The nearest residential, just for your reference, is to the northwest of the site. The lot size is pretty substantial, a little bit over 17 acres, where the unit size is 1,600 square feet, which is a 2-story building, but the occupant is using a lot less than that based on the design of the building. This is a site photo that includes the recently approved and usable outdoor patio with the interior retail area, restaurant area right at the center. So a little bit about this restaurant. It's actually located within a 1,600 square foot building, but the tenant is only using approximately 564 square feet of indoor area with a new 334 square foot enclosed outdoor patio. As you can see from the image, there's about 33 spaces for about 33 patrons, so it's a substantially small restaurant. They've been in operation since 2012, and previous to that was a retail use of a flower shop. The business specializes in European style food, coffee, hence the name. And the current hours of operation are Monday through Sunday, just 7 days a week, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. with no proposed changes to that. I'd like to include that there is no live entertainment or after hours being requested at this time. This application is solely for a conditional use permit to allow the sale of alcohol. The site plan here, actually the box at the center, so highlighted by the black, is where the building is located in reference to the corner of South Bristol Street and Sunflower. Substantially small building with parking to the west. And this is the floor plan. As I indicated, it's a pretty small space. Most of it is the equipment, the service area, the counter with a restroom. As indicated in the floor plan itself, in the interior area, highlighted by red, is where the applicant is proposing to store and display the alcohol. Approximately 28 square feet of the total space, which is less than the 5% that is permitted by code. And as I mentioned, the applicant is, well, I'd like to mention that the applicant is familiar with these types of businesses and actually has 3 other locations. So as part of the analysis, I do want to highlight that, and the applicant is available to answer any additional questions. But through the review process, police department indicated that they do not have any issues with the approval of the granting of the conditional use permit. The location is in a integrated shopping center and is away from sensitive land uses. As mentioned, we do have conditions of approval and a property maintenance agreement, as well as the standards of the Santa Ana Municipal Code that will address any potential issues or impacts foreseen. And as I also mentioned in the presentation, the current business has a history of compliance with all the requirements of the Santa Ana Municipal Code, not only in this location, but the operator also has experience and history in the downtown. Pursuant to CEQA, this is a project that is categorically exempt under Section 15301. It's essentially an existing facility, so an environmental review will be filed with this project. number 2021-15. There are no fiscal impacts associated with this project. And that's complete staff presentation. As recommended, adopt the resolution approving the conditional use permit 2021-04 as conditioned. I'm available to answer any additional questions you may have, and the applicant is present in case there are some operational questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. Commissioner Alderete, any questions of staff?
No questions.
Commissioner Calderon,
I have no questions.
Vice Chair Morrissey,
No questions.
Commissioner Fan,
No question.
Commissioner Ramos,
No questions.
Commissioner Wu.
No questions.
I have no questions at this point in time of staff. So with that, we'll move on. Madam Secretary, thank you, thank you, Ivan, for your presentation. Madam Secretary, have we received any written communication on this item?
We did not receive any written communication.
Okay, the public hearing is now open. Would the applicant like to speak on this matter?
Samuel Ruiz, please unmute yourself and you may begin addressing the commission.
Hello?
Yes,
Hello, we
please
can
go
hear you.
ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to make myself available to the commission if there was any questions or concerns as far as the CUP we are requesting. Just wanted to mention that our other locations also have beer and wine, and we have successfully been running those without any issues or increased crime to the area or damaging the community whatsoever. I am very familiar with the CUP process. We did the same thing for my other business there in downtown Santa Ana, which is Cafe Cultura, and we've successfully been able to have had our CUP for over 2 years without any issues. So I just kind of wanted to bring those points forward to give the commission the right idea or the comfort that if this were to be approved, that we have the experience to successfully run it.
Okay. Anything else, Sam?
No, that'd be it, unless there's any questions.
Okay, Commissioner Alderete, do you have any questions of the applicant?
No questions.
Commissioner Calderon,
No questions.
Vice Chair Morrissey,
No questions.
Commissioner Fan,
No questions.
Commissioner Ramos,
No questions.
Commissioner Wu.
Just as a point of clarification, your stated hours from 8 to, I forget what is 10. If I show up at 8 o'clock in the morning and wanting a beer, can I get one?
As per the way the ABC allows that to happen, the answer would be yes. That is not our plan or our core clientele. We primarily want the CUP to be able to capitalize on the weekend brunch, and we are going to have very minimal selection, primarily just mimosas and 1 or 2 European beers. But I mean, as long as the ABC allows it, that would be something that they would dictate. But we don't plan on advertising for such thing.
Thank you. I wasn't interrogating. It was just a question that I thought we needed to ask. Thank you very much for a clear answer.
You just want to know where to go for a beer at 8 o'clock in the morning.
I don't
That's
drink, so
completely
I
up
don't
to
know,
him
yeah.
and his personal choice.
He got me at brunch, so we're good.
Okay,
Great.
I guess the question I have is that, obviously we've had a lot of outdoor patios that have been created over the past couple of years with the COVID situation. Many of those are temporary in nature. I guess my question is, since the vast majority of your restaurant is outdoors, and also we're talking about ABC, and ABC allowed the outdoors to be beer and wine and spirits for the pandemic, but we're not sure what's going to happen after things have settled down a little bit. Are we going to have to shut down these outdoor areas? How does that play into your plan at this point in time?
In my application, Ivan has a permit number. Our patio is not a temporary thing. We submitted plans a while back and were approved we build a long-term actual metal fence or gate. It's an enclosed patio that's been approved and finalized. So regardless of hopefully COVID does not come back, the answer is that our patio is there permanently, and that should not be an issue, because the main reason we invested in that is knowing that outdoor is going to be key to a potential third or fourth wave. That's why we made the investment of making our outdoor gate a permanent one. It's not like a tent or anything like that. It's an actual enclosed patio that has the correct amount of footings per building code, and hopefully will be there many years to come.
And it's within the compliance of what would be necessary for ABC, is what you're saying?
Correct. Correct. ABC is all done. The last thing she's waiting for to finally give us their final approval or release the license is the CUP approval.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that answer, Sam.
No problem.
Madam Secretary, would you please, do we have any phone comments from the public at this point in time?
If you'd like to comment on this item, please select the hand icon if you're participating via Zoom. If you are calling in, please press *9 now. We'll wait about 20 seconds. We do not have any speakers, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Sam, do you have any last comments that you might have at this point?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. We will now close the public hearing, and we'll bring it back to the commission for final question and determination of a motion. Does anybody want to make a motion at this point in time, or is there someone that would like to make a comment?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Wu.
I'd like to trying to find the number. Adopt the resolution approving CUP number 2021-04 as conditioned.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Alderete. Any other comments at this point in time? Hearing none. Madam Secretary, please do a roll call vote.
Thank you. Commissioner Alderete.
Yes.
Commissioner Calderon.
Aye.
Vice Chair Morrissey.
Aye.
Commissioner Pham.
Aye.
Commissioner Ramos.
Aye.
Commissioner Wu.
Yes.
And Chair McLaughlin.
Aye.
Motion passes by unanimous consent.
Okay. Thank you very much. And again, good luck, Sam. Let's move on. At this point in time, this concludes our public hearing. We are now moving on to a work study session for reasonable accommodations. Please note, no action will be taken on this item. Staff will now provide a presentation. I understand Jerry is going to start out, and then Ali, you're going to do the back end of the presentation.
That is correct, Chairman. Thank you for that. Commissioners, as requested on the last Plan Commission meeting, this is a group study session on proposed zoning ordinance amendment number 2021-02 regarding group living arrangements and reasonable accommodations. Just to give you some background, the city has experienced an increased number of complaints from residents and neighborhood associations representatives regarding group living arrangements. Since 2016, code enforcement has received over 50 complaints associated to such uses. These complaints range from noise complaints to parking complaints, lack of property maintenance, as well as secondhand smoking. The purpose of the ordinance is to amend Chapter 41 of the zoning code in order to update outdated definitions to reflect current state and federal laws and to better address group living arrangements that create a public nuisance. Moving on to the next slide. Staff began drafting this proposed ordinance about 2 years ago based on the City of Costa Mesa ordinance, which they adopted a couple of years ago. They actually have a permitting system for sober living facilities. However, just to give you some background, that particular ordinance has basically faced numerous challenges and has cost the City of Costa Mesa millions of dollars. The City of Santa Ana is proposing an ordinance that's modeled by other Orange County cities, including Lake Forest, Aliso Viejo, San Clemente, and San Juan Capistrano. To date, there are no legal challenges that the city is aware of with regards to those particular cities. As mentioned, the proposed ordinance was presented to the Plan Commission back in April 26th and was continued to date, basically to conduct this study session on the proposed ordinance. So just further to give you a better explanation of what our group living arrangement, there's no standard definition for what a group living arrangement is. However, this is usually a term used to basically categorize group homes, which is a different type of group living arrangement. Depending upon the type of service provided, a state license might be required for certain group living arrangements. Some common examples of these include boarding houses or lodging houses, fraternity and sorority houses, community and residential care facilities, group homes, sober living facilities, as well as transitional and supportive housing facilities. As indicated, licensed facilities, in 1973, the state enacted the Communities Care Act, which established a citywide system of community and residential care facilities for persons with mental or development disabilities or social dependent children and adults. Such facilities are overseen by the Health and Human Services Agency, and they do require licensing. To further break that down to you, there's 3 different departments that oversee those licensing types depending on the type of services. One of them being the Department of Social Services, the other the Department of Healthcare Services, and the last department is the Department of Public Health. Just to give you a further breakdown of what these licensed facilities look like, they usually include foster homes, social rehabilitation facilities, community treatment facilities, transitional shelters, group homes, homeless shelters, crisis nurseries, care facilities for persons with disabilities, congregated living health facilities, nursing facilities, pediatric day and respite health facilities, as well as alcoholism and drug abuse treatment facilities. Licensed facilities that are licensed by the state must be permitted or conditionally permitted or not permitted per the regulation of other residential developments with regards to residential dwelling units. Pretty much, these licensed facilities need to be treated as single-family homes. And further, the state further categorizes these facilities in basically 2 categories, small facilities or large facilities. Small facilities are those facilities that are providing care or services to 6 or fewer individuals, and large facilities are those that provide services to 7 or more individuals. The state also does have separation requirements depending on the type of licensed facility, and such separation requirements are either 0 feet, 300 feet, or 1,000 feet. Again, these separation requirements depend on the type of licensed facilities. Cities cannot regulate small licensed facilities, but to a certain extent, the city does have the authority to regulate large facilities. So that gives you more or less a breakdown of licensed facilities. Now we're moving on to unlicensed facilities. Unlicensed facilities are pretty much facilities that are not regulated by the state. Any proposed regulations for unlicensed facilities would have to comply with state and federal laws. So in case that the city wants to regulate unlicensed facilities, such regulations do need to comply with Fair Housing, the Fair Housing Act, the Americans with Disability Act, the California Fair Employment and Housing Act, as well as the Latterman Development Disabilities Act. Again, such laws cannot prohibit or basically discriminate against individuals on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, family status, and disability through zoning laws or other land use practices. With that, I'll go ahead and pass the rest of the presentation to Laura.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Commission. Good evening again. So now to just kind of rewind back to why the city has embarked on this zoning ordinance amendment that's before you for consideration again in 2 weeks. The first purpose is to basically update the reasonable accommodations ordinance. In order to do that, the city would need to remove it from the zoning code and readopt it in another chapter. Now, every city has to have a reasonable accommodation ordinance, every jurisdiction that is. Reasonable accommodation ordinance provides for, if you want to think about it, relief from standards that a city may have in the event that a person or a person living with a person with disabilities requests modification to a standard or a policy. So a classic example would be requesting blue curb to be painted in front of one's home, all the way up to living with a family member who maybe has a developmental disability that may require, for example, taller front yard fence to help provide more security for that family member from street traffic. So currently the city's reasonable accommodation ordinance does exist. It was adopted some time ago, but it needs to be updated and relocated out of the zoning code and into Chapter 1, which is the more general provisions section of the Santa Ana Municipal Code. And by doing so, the intent would be to no longer make these requests a land use decision, but more of a request based on one's disability status and reasons for accommodating, being accommodated through a special sort of accommodation and relief from whatever code standard, be it something in the zoning code or the public works code or anything cross-city, regardless of department. Most cities these days are placing their reasonable accommodations ordinances outside of their zoning code. So this would be consistent with that better practice. The second intent of this zoning ordinance amendment is to update definitions in Chapter 41, which is the zoning code, to better address group living arrangements, or GLA, to assist the Code Enforcement Division and Police Department when responding to inquiries or complaints about such suspected facilities that may be in operation. So currently the zoning code has many, many definitions that have been supplanted by state and federal definitions and policies that just no longer apply, especially in a zoning code when these definitions change over time or are simply supplanted or superseded by state or federal laws, which are higher than city laws. And in addition, use categories like what's listed in R1 or R2, other zoning districts, those use categories may not accurately reflect what really needs to be allowed versus what the city, at any city level, could effectively regulate. So the city, we're trying to draw a distinction between what we would call a small licensed facility versus a boarding house. So a small licensed facility is what Jerry described earlier in the presentation. These are facilities that care for individuals with 6 or fewer individuals that are licensed by state law. These could be congregate living or alcohol and drug recovery, a variety of different facility types that are licensed, as was indicated on one of the previous slides. As per state law, like in any city, including Santa Ana, those facilities would have to be allowed by right anywhere where we allow residential land uses, essentially. Licensed facilities with 7 or more individuals and unlicensed facilities of any type would be subject to what would be called a boarding house. And that definition I'll go over a little bit later. If a facility is investigated and found to be operating as a boarding house, those facilities that would be providing care to disabled individuals would be able to still submit a reasonable accommodation request through the reasonable accommodation process as outlined in Ordinance Amendment number 2021-1, which was included for the Commission's benefit in the April 26 staff report. That ordinance amendment is subject to separate City Council approval because it is outside of the zoning code. Boarding houses would, under the proposed ordinance that was brought to the Commission on April 26, be prohibited citywide. The boarding house would be defined as a residence or dwelling unit or any portion thereof where occupants occupy the residence or the dwelling unit under 2 or more separate rental agreements. These could be leases, these could be rental agreements, either written, oral, or implied. When we presented that to the Planning Commission on April 26, many of the Commission members expressed concerns about the boarding house definition and how that definition could inadvertently lead to unanticipated consequences affecting several topics, including family living situations, where oftentimes multiple families or multiple individuals rent different portions of a single family home, or even a multifamily apartment unit with multiple bedrooms, subject to separate rental agreements, as well as unanticipated impacts to city assistance programs that are administered by the Community Development Agency and specifically the Housing Division. Several commissioners, such as Commissioner Ramos, illustrated that information for us that evening, which subsequently resulted in us liaising and communicating with Justin Brown, the Housing Division Manager, over the course of last week to learn more details about those programs and how they may or may not be affected by our previous intended definition of boarding house. So based on the feedback that we received from several commissioners on April 26th, we met with the Housing Division as well as Alvaro Nunez, the Code Enforcement Manager, as well as our legal team again, several times last week to reconsider the boarding house definition to be written in a way not to include or impact many different categories that we found could be existing in Santa Ana, namely these 4 subcategories, such as a home with 4 or fewer rental agreements. So this would be a home with 4 or fewer families sharing a single family residence. So up to and including 4 instead of 2. A home with 4 or fewer elderly individuals living together under separate rental agreements. Sometimes these could be unlicensed convalescent care facilities, as well as smaller unlicensed group living arrangements that may be in operation. The majority of unlicensed group living operations just tangentially tend to be for 6 individuals, just like their licensed state counterparts. But with the proposed modified definition, this would not affect these smaller ones with 4 or fewer. And lastly, it's worth mentioning not affect other transient arrangements such as a bed and breakfast hotel. So based on this feedback that we received, we prepared tonight's presentation to include further details on the city's efforts, as well as further details on the distinction between licensed and unlicensed facilities, and how licensed facilities are handled by the state of California's various reviewing agencies. And then most importantly, respond to the Commission's questions that surrounded such GLAs and provide an opportunity to ask code enforcement clarifying practice questions, and also discuss these efforts with Housing Division Manager Justin Brown that may be affected by this revised boarding house definition. And both division managers are on the line tonight to help answer any Commission questions, which was specifically requested by this group at the last meeting. If we're able to successfully answer the questions that are raised tonight and incorporate some of the feedback that we received, then our intent is to return to this body on May 24th, the next regularly scheduled meeting, with an updated draft ordinance. And then from there, if recommended for approval, proceed to City Council in June and early July. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions. Again, we have a very diverse group of individuals on hand to help clarify anything for the Commission tonight. We have myself and Jerry, as well as legal counsel, Min, and Alvaro Nunez and Justin Brown. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Jerry. We'll get right to the questions. Commissioner Alderete, any questions of staff on this?
I just have a couple at the beginning, and I'm sure I'll have more. But in terms of the ordinance, what did Huntington Beach do? I think it was the city was Huntington Beach that the court or a court found objectionable, if we know.
Commissioner Alderete, I'm sorry, some of your question broke up a little bit. Would you mind repeating again?
Sure. So I think it was the city of Huntington Beach that was sued under their ordinance. And I was wondering, what is it that Huntington Beach did that was objectionable, that a court found was objectionable?
Thank you. I'm happy to provide an overview of that, but I think John Funk with City Attorney's Office might have more detail specifically on that. John, is that any detail that you can share?
Commissioner Alderete, good evening. You may have in mind Costa Mesa, or did you have in mind Huntington Beach, if I may ask?
No, you're right. It's Costa Mesa. You're right.
Oh, yes, you are correct that Costa Mesa was sued on several occasions over what I'm going to call their sober living ordinance. And the main difference between that ordinance and ours is that it regulates sober living ordinances directly and really based on a disability. And that's what got the city into the most trouble. They did prevail at the trial level, but it is on appeal right now at the Ninth Circuit. The decision is not expected to come down for a year or so. People are watching very closely. And even if it does prevail, it still is troubled waters for the topic of regulation of these group living arrangements because it does target a disability status and regulates directly on that. And our ordinance is not doing that. It's regulating on a much more facially neutral basis.
Okay, I got it.
And as Ali said, the city has spent several million dollars in defending their litigation. So people are certainly watching closely, and the outcome is by no means certain.
Got it. No, that's helpful. The other sort of broad question I have, is there anything, how do I put this? We've got multi-family housing, and some of the complaints that I see associated with, we'll call these boarding houses, are no different than the problems that you see at multi-tenant or multi-family housing, so apartments. And so I'm wondering if there's anything distinct about boarding homes that's any different than any sort of multi-housing in terms of the complaint.
Thank you,
This
Commissioner.
is Mintai. So the multifamily housing development consists of multifamily dwelling units that could be individually rented and would not at the minimum be a part of this definition. This definition addresses a single unit where it has more than one leases or rental agreement that are within the same unit. So the multifamily, you would not be running into this situation. Now, if you have multifamily units that have multi-rental agreements within those units, then it would be potentially subject to this ordinance based on the current proposal if it has 5 or more rental agreement.
So I guess my issue is a little bit different. So I noticed in the staff PowerPoint, it says the complaints address a range of issues, including noise, parking, trash, altercation, secondhand smoke. And that seems, those are sort of common to any it doesn't need to be multifamily, it could be single family homes. That was really my point, that I'm trying to figure out what's different about this sort of housing, this boarding homes, that isn't really similar to every type of home in terms of the code enforcement issues.
So from a code
Commissioner,
enforcement perspective, and I'll let our code enforcement officer and manager to answer any further questions, but impacts are impact, and you're right, whether it's from a single family residence, from a multifamily residence, the issue there is the magnitude and the occurrence, the reoccurrence of those type of situation, and whether or not they rise to the level of a nuisance. So the difference in terms of how we evaluate is whether or not the location creates a nuisance that meets the standard of what the code would measure as a public nuisance, and those would have to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis based on the nuisance, the number of occurrence, and the extent to which they affect other properties.
Yeah. Okay. All right, that's helpful. Thank you. That's it for my questions for now.
Commissioner Calderon.
I have no questions at this time. Thank you.
Vice Chair Morrissey.
I guess I have one question currently. Does this policy change anything about our R1 or R2 zone designations? I think the PowerPoint had or you made a
The proposed
statement.
ordinance does not fundamentally change the R1, R2, or any residential zoning development regulations. What it does is that it does provide for reasonable accommodation to address any situation that is requiring accommodation by a code that would allow a person living in the unit having a disability to have equal access to the enjoyment of their property.
Okay.
Yeah.
Vice Chair Morrissey?
No further questions
Okay.
currently. Thanks.
Commissioner Fan?
No.
Commissioner Fan, anything?
Sorry. No questions at the
Okay.
moment.
Commissioner Ramos?
Yes, I have a few initial questions. So my concern when this was first brought to us last meeting was that there was going to be, well, first that no more than 2 leases would be allowed per residence before it's considered a boarding house and unlawful in the city of Santa Ana. And I see that that number has been increased from 2 to 4. And my question is for everyone involved. So planning, CDA, and code enforcement. How did you all agree on the number 4? Yeah, I'll start off with that. Why 4?
So to answer that question, and that is a great question, Commissioner Ramos, because we obviously want to evaluate how our proposal will least impact our residents or create any unintentional consequences as a result of how we want to reasonably accommodate any type of situation that is not expressed by our code. The number 4 was arrived at based on what we foresee as how a property can be deemed to have maintain a single family or multi-family character, but still be able to accommodate the types of impacts that are associated when you have a large number of leases on a property. We base it on the state, or we rely back on the state requirements today that a single family, for example, could qualify for an ADU. It could qualify for a JADU. It could qualify for also room sharing. And therefore, based on those types of arrangement, we would have at least 3, if not 4, potential separate leases that could accommodate for in a single family house. And it is a call that is based on judgment and how we assess potential impacts of uses of the property to the adjacent surrounding property and its neighborhood. We also, as our staff mentioned, consulted with CDA and code enforcement, as well as legal, to look at where the number 4 can be distinct from 2, 3, or 5, and we found that 4 would reasonably accommodate the type of situation that we could have here existing in the city while not impacting the ability of a residential property to minimize its nuisance impact to adjacent neighbors.
Okay, thank you for the clarification or the explanation. My concern is that limiting this to 4 is still very restrictive. I can think of a lot of instances, well, currently existing, many people in our community might have more than 4 individual leases at one residential address. So if there is a 4-bedroom unit, there could be a family in every single room. If there is an ADU on site, or if there is a garage that has been converted into a residence, we would now be at 5. So, and I thank you for your explanation, but I think that's under the impression that if there is an ADU on site that might go to one family, or that could go to actually two families. And there may be more rooms available in that house that are being rented to multiple families. So I have a question for our housing division manager, Judson Brown, if he's available.
Hi, Commissioner Ramos, I'm here.
Hi, Judson. So I know that in distributing the emergency rental assistance, the program is also open to families that are eligible, and this includes families that might rent a room or another converted space in the home as long as it's habitable. So my question is, from the applications that you've seen and the stories that you've heard from the partners that you're working with, have you seen instances where there are families sharing a common space as their residence, whether that be a living room or a garage, or even instances where there may be more than one individual sharing the same bedroom?
Yes, thank you.
Under separate leases?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Ramos. We did discuss this with our colleagues in planning, and when we evaluated the data of all the applications that we received for our emergency rental relief program called Cares for Tenants, we've received 3,200 different cases, some applications that have been started and not completed, but just different cases in our application system. And of those 3,200 cases, over 880 have applicants who've used the same address. So you can conjecture, you could hypothesize that many of those applicants are applying from the same address, are renting bedrooms in individual units as the owner of the address. And we see anecdotally that many families are renting bedrooms and being approved for our emergency rental assistance, having just rented individual bedrooms in a home.
Thank you. And I have another question. This is for whomever can answer. Is there data that the city, aside from the data that Judson just mentioned, but does the city have an idea on how many residences in the city would be impacted if this is approved by the council? And specifically this language that's submitting residential addresses to no more than 4 individual leases.
So in terms of the living arrangements of the individual dwellings within the city, we don't maintain that data. We don't keep that data, nor do we track it. This ordinance is proposing as a way of enabling regulations that when we do have situation that is surface or is not in compliance, that we have regulation to be able to address the situation from a tracking, monitoring, or enforcement perspective. It would not be possible for us to know the status of 78,000 units of housing in the city that we have today as to how many people are living in each unit.
Thank you. And I'll just say one last thing so other commissioners can comment. I'll probably have more questions as the discussion continues. But at the last meeting, I also had a question around how this interacts with the housing element update that the city is going to be undergoing. And specifically considering amending the zoning code now and in this way, I have concern that it could be read as being restrictive as an impediment to fair housing by limiting housing opportunities for lower income individuals in Santana. And I'm concerned that this language is in many ways criminalizing poverty and limiting opportunity for the poorest individuals in our city.
Thank you for your perspective.
Any other comments, Commissioner Ramos?
And not at this time.
Okay, Commissioner Wu.
I want to thank staff for the clarification in compartmentalizing this update of the ordinance in terms of the license usage, and that seemed to be clear so that we do not deny rights, to the different category. On the unlicensed part, I thank the staff for the sensitivity in terms of looking at the housing need in the community. My question is directly towards the neighborhood integrity, which has been the main issue that has bubbled up from the neighborhood regarding those issues where if you're a R1 zone, all of a sudden you have all these illegal conversion into multiple units, without permits, planning, and all that. People staying in the hallways, and whatnot. So it seemed to me that you're going to handle the jurisdiction where the city does have jurisdiction over by protecting the neighborhood integrity through both the general plan and by your zoning that already exists. That you also gave a definition for boarding houses that enables up to at least 4. Does that allow you also in your enforcement or when questions come up for you to be able to, I don't know what you call it, to judge what to do to resolve the issue?
When we do enforcement, we always use our best judgment to evaluate the letter of the law as well as how the law is applied by the city and within the framework of our regulations. So the goal is always to protect the public health and welfare, but evenly apply our regulations so that it promotes the goal of safe, fair housing. As I mentioned previously, the proposed regulations is an enabling ordinance that addresses how we view boarding houses and provide us with clarity as how would we address boarding houses should we come across such a situation. So that provides us with the ability to then, at that point in time, to evaluate how the city would address and what are the circumstances surrounding the particulars of a situation and be able to address it appropriately at that point in time.
Yeah, and I did not hear in the presentation nor in your update any measure to move in the direction that got Costa Mesa in trouble, which was punitive towards the housing for certain population. So I think that's a very good thing about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wu. I'm just going to go back to the numbers that were mentioned from a housing perspective and the subsidies that were evaluated. The number was 3,200, shall we say, addresses at this point in time?
I'm sorry, Chair, if you can repeat the question.
The question I'm asking is, from a housing perspective, there were 3,200 applications, as I understood it. And when you talk about multiple groups of people living under one roof, there was 800. But what I didn't hear, whether that was 2 families or 3 families or 4 families, how do those statistics break down a little bit differently?
Thank you, Chair. Judson, would you have that information available?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the data here that we're using, you've got to keep in mind, these are just applications that have been submitted to our Cares for Tenants program. So as we responded to Commissioner Ramos's question, you know, the data on all single-family housing units in Santa Ana and how many units are being rented per bedroom isn't available to us. But what, in terms of responding to your question, we pulled a report from our Cares for Tenants application system. We had 3,841 cases or applications in various stages, like they were active, completed, they've been selected, et cetera. And out of those 3,841 cases, there were 887 cases with the same addresses between tenants and landlords. Now you just, you can extrapolate from there and assume that tenants are renting bedrooms in those individual units from owners of those homes, or you could just take it as its face value that it would need to be scrubbed much more thoroughly. The data would need to be scrubbed much more thoroughly in order to refine and ask the questions that you're looking for. But yeah, that's
So it says that there's 887 that basically have the same addresses together. Now I go on that is, you know, do we know, for instance, are we looking at maybe 50 possible homes where there's 3 or 4 leases, or we don't have that data? I mean, it was my understanding that one of the distinctions we were trying to achieve here was to break away from the boarding house situation and the economics about that. And here we are, but we're saying, you know, is it 2 or 3 on average that we have in this kind of a situation? And if it's 2 or 3, then it should be in line with what we basically have outlined with this ordinance to have up to 4 leases. And it essentially doesn't require, you know, or doesn't equate it to a boarding house or anything of that nature.
And thank you, Chair, for that observation. And, you know, obviously we would have to dig into the numbers a little bit more to get the finer grain. But just from a, you know, a quick math perspective, you know, the 887 common addresses roughly average out to about a little bit over 4 persons per household. So it ranges right in there with 4 leases per household. Obviously, some you can have more. I mean, some you could have much less, and some would be at that, you know, at that number. But the goal is just to make sure that we don't, we would be able to capture as much of the situation as possible.
So the average is about 4, a little over 4, which would lead you to believe that there's, you know, there's going to be some fallout no matter what. It's not going to be pure and clean. But
Correct.
then it also tells you that, you know, the vast majority of them probably fall into the category of 3 or 4, depending upon, you know, circumstances.
Correct.
So therein lies the underpinnings for why the proposal has been based on 4 or less leases. Is that correct?
Our goal is to be able to capture, as I said, as much as feasible to avoid the unintended consequences of the various living arrangement that we may have here in the city. Obviously, as I mentioned previously, we don't track all 78,000 units of housing and the number of occupancy. However, we believe that what we have developed provide the widest net that we can capture without unintentionally creating an over-carrying capacity of a property to address the needs of the residents without impacting adjacent properties and the enjoyment of adjacent property owners as well, but while still accommodating, as I mentioned, the potential living arrangements that we have here existing in the city.
Okay. The other question that I'm just going to go back to the presentation, and it just caught my eye, and that is there was a comment made about bed and breakfast. And I guess the thing that came to my attention all of a sudden was, you know, Airbnb And, how does something like that play into this ordinance? If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm just looking at it from the standpoint, we had a situation not too long ago in West Floral Park where there was a house that had upwards of 10 different groups of people staying in that facility at any given time, all short term, but they were at least upwards of 10 different people that could possibly be there. How do
Thank you,
we,
Chair. And an Airbnb would be considered transient type living, similar to a hotel or a motel. But regardless of that, our code currently, R is a prescriptive code to where the use of a house or a residential property must be specifically permitted in order for it to be permitted. Otherwise, it would be considered non-permissive. So our code does not provide for Airbnb specifically as a permitted use of a residential home. So therefore, it is not permitted currently.
okay, just needed that little clarification. I'm good with that.
Chairman Mark, can I add on to
Yes,
your
sir.
question?
Go ahead. Commissioner Wu.
The question you raised made me think about absentee landlord. And when we had neighborhood housing services, I know that we did some survey and found a certain neighborhood were overrun by absentee landlords. So if an absentee landlord rents to a renter and then the renter then sublet, how would we what does our ordinance do to have enforcement here? How is that handled?
It's as indicated, it would be 4 total in rental agreements, regardless of whether it's a prime or a sub.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Shall we cycle through here and go again? Commissioner Alderetti.
Thank you. So I've been listening to this, and I'm having a difficulty understanding how we arrived at the number 4. And I think it was the person from the housing department. If you could just help me understand the data that kind of led us to 4, or maybe not led you, but led to kind of this idea that 4 is sort of the 4 or less is sort of the magic number. I just don't think I'm understanding it.
Well,
So go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, well, so when we analyze the demographic data for Santa Ana, 53% of the households in our city have 4 or more members of their household, right? And then when we dig in deeper and we look at even larger households, 10.9% of households in Santa Ana have 7 or more members. So the landing at 4, we're talking about 4 different rental agreements, right, in one single unit, and that's as far deep as we can go in terms of analyzing the demographic data to analyze the density of the households in our community. But 4 different rental agreements could be, multiple members per that rental agreement. So I think Min and Ali, we were talking about what that number could reach up to, and you could get up to 2 members per rental agreement, or 3, I think, and then it gets up there in size, right? So if you're looking at our population, where only 10.9% of our households in Santa Ana have 7 or more members, then we land at a pretty good place when we're landing at 4, allowing 4 rental agreements per a single family home. Let me hand it off to Min.
Thank you, Justin, and that is correct. I think you make a distinction that we are regulating rental agreements and not necessary sizes of family.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Calderon.
I have no questions. Thank you, everyone, for your comments and questions.
Vice Chair Marcy.
Yeah, I think I'm still uncertain as to how, I know you'd mentioned you don't think it affects our zoning code, but it seems like the unintended consequence is we're allowing multi-family dwellings in our R1 zone when the
Thank you,
zone-
Commissioner. Thank you. Thank you for that perspective.
Yeah.
Maybe I can provide a clarification as well. Currently, state law already requires that a single-family residence be allowed for, at the minimum, an ADU, and additionally, potentially a JADU. We as a city has also been issue a decision on whether or not we could regulate the maximum number of occupancy per household, per dwelling unit as well. And that's exactly what we're not trying to, violate here. And your concern of turning a single family residential neighborhood character into multifamily, that is a valid concern. And, I think opinion and perspective on either side is equally respectable and equally justifiable. What we're saying here is that, regardless of how we foresee this, the state has in many ways preempt us from protecting the single family neighborhood fabric as, in traditionally. And that definition continue to evolve. And it will continue to change over the years as housing pressures continue to evolve. So I understand your perspective. I just want to share that some part of that train has already left the station.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just trying to, and I understand the other side of the argument, and I'm not trying to limit. People need a place to live, so I'm not gonna.
Thank you.
It seems like there's another way to, a little more work, we can figure it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Commissioner Fan.
Yes, my perspective is I'm in support of the number 4 because I think that we can look at the data any way we see fit to extrapolate a number. But my perspective on number 4 is that we have to keep in mind like what everyone has been saying, that there's 4 separate leases. And so it's, potentially the average house on a suburban lot is 12 to 1,400 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. And you have 4 separate leases. And let's just assume it's 2 or 3 people per lease. It's an incredibly large amount of people in a single family lot. And again, I appreciate the sensitivity to housing for all. But then at a certain point, I think we want to promote quality housing rather than just volume, because there's a reason why certain structures are designated multifamily. Is because when there's multifamily, there are sizable construction material. There's sizable fire rating and consideration to help to promote health and safety of those multifamily tenant. When we make allowances for so much of an increase in occupancy in a single family residence that is constructed for a single family, then I think potentially the end result might be we might be putting our citizens' health and welfare in jeopardy by kind of increasing the number to more than 4. I think the number 4 to me is appropriate, considering what we see a typical house square footage is in the city. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Pham. Thank you for your comment. I just want to make a point of clarification, is that a building occupancy, whether it's commercial, residential, single family, multifamily, ultimately is regulated by the building code and the building code has maximum occupancy that are much higher than any land use or zoning standard would provide. We're not trying to regulate that. And we're not venturing into that area of the law. What we are looking at is just controlling the number of, regulating the number of rental agreements within a dwelling unit, not the number of people. I just want to make that clarification.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Ramos.
Yes, I have a question. Well, first, a request. I know that this is a very complex issue that took a lot of discussion amongst the commissioners for us to begin to understand it a little bit more clearly at the last meeting. So because this is a study session, and I know we have members of the public on the Zoom and also watching via YouTube, can we, can staff please explain the distinction and intent between this language and what we saw Costa Mesa do, where theirs seemed to be targeting sober living facilities. And here it seems that we're looking at boarding houses or anything that could be considered as a boarding house.
Yeah, Commissioner Ramos, I think I can attempt to address your concern. In the city of Costa Mesa, they really targeted that form of housing, specifically sober living, which touched upon disability, status of disability, and that usually trips a lot of wires in terms of coming close to violating fair housing laws. And that's exactly what Costa Mesa was sued upon, alleged violations of state and federal anti-discrimination statutes. The distinction here is that the city is attempting to regulate on a facially neutral basis, essentially more of a bright line rule based on, as what Executive Director Tai said, the number of leases or the number of rental agreements in each dwelling unit, something that would apply across the board and is generally applicable, and that isn't targeting any one single use of a home, including things like sober living or recovery homes, which have attracted a lot of attention in communities, obviously in Southern California. But it is really looking to regulate, again, on a facially neutral basis without having an unintended effect on housing models that are prevalent in Santa Ana.
Thank you. So my follow-up question to that is, does the language that Costa Mesa passed, did that also restrict the number of leases that could exist within a residential home and impact multiple families that may be living under the same roof in that way?
Mr. Ramos, I don't have the ordinance directly in front of me, but I can tell you that if it did so under the umbrella of a disability and rather than a neutral basis as what we're seeing here. So that again is the distinction. We aren't targeting a specific type of living, a recovery home, a sober living home, call it what you will. We're looking to regulate the number of leases that are present in any house. And if there is relief sought from that number, then the folks or the parties could go through the reasonable accommodation process. But certainly, okay. We could get any follow-up information for you that you would like.
Thank you. Yeah, I would just, that was my question, whether the language that Costa Mesa passed and then later got sued for was also restricting the number of leases in the way that this language would, if approved. And then I'm also wondering, I have one more question. Let me gather my thoughts for a second. So okay, I recalled my question. Are there any concerns with this language and the housing element update that is coming up and this language being perceived as an impediment to fair housing or limiting housing opportunities for Santa Ana's low-income residents?
We believe that the proposed language, as our attorney has said, is neutral to the numbers, the type of uses, but rather limited to addressing this issue based on the number of rental agreement that is reasonable within a single dwelling unit. The question as to whether or not it meets the intent of the housing element of providing housing for different economic needs within the city. We believe that it is very well within the goals and the of not only the housing element, but also the general plan, the goals and objectives of both, which is to provide a safe living environment that allows for different types of housing for our residents at every economic levels within the city. And as discussed previously, we did work with our affordable housing guru, Judson Brown, to evaluate how the language could be crafted so that we don't intentionally or unintentionally impact the type of living arrangements that we as a city support through providing assistance for living arrangement that are that has multiple rental agreements. So through that consultation, through our evaluation of the existing development pattern that we have in the city, we believe 4 is a reasonable number that would allow for the living arrangement that we may have here at the city, and it can accommodate that and not impact the ability for residents to obtain affordable housing in the city.
Thank you. And I appreciate the effort and the time that staff has taken to bring this back and also to have other staff present. I'm still not really convinced by the number 4, and I know that there is an attempt being made to mitigate the impacts, especially on our lower income families. But I would like to recommend to staff to consider increasing that number to at least 5, to really capture any potential outliers, which I don't think would be many, or those cases where there may be 5 leases in a home. Santa Ana also has larger homes, and I know that in many cases those are also being leased up in this. Thank you. That's it for me.
Appreciate your
Mr.
input and
Ramos?
thank you for your recommendation.
Yes. And Commissioner Ramos, if I may interject, I think I can clarify or address your question with a little more specificity. And that is with Costa Mesa, I was able to pull up the ordinance, and Costa Mesa, as a more threshold matter, defined group home as a supportive living environment where there are living persons who are considered disabled, and then went on to regulate those group homes based on the number of occupants themselves. And so that, I think, is what I meant when I said earlier that the lens through which Costa Mesa saw it, the group home lens, if you will, was really one under the umbrella of disability. And it assumed the folks living in those types of group homes were disabled under a state or federal law, and then went on to regulate them based on how many occupants there were.
They exceeded their jurisdiction, right?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, could you repeat that once again?
They exceeded their jurisdiction, and in other words, it was not their jurisdiction to limit the number.
They certainly attempted to, but where I think
in the case of persons with disabilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I think
Thank you.
going back to the Costa Mesa for one more thing, I think the other thing is that Costa Mesa has a higher concentration than any other city, so to speak, in Orange County for the sober living situation, which you're pointing out from a legal point of view. It's the disability aspect that this is a challenge under. I think the other challenge that happened with Costa Mesa is also the fact that it wasn't just 1 or 2 homes on a street. It was a high concentration of 5, 6, 7 homes right next to each other. And I was in one of the hearings where essentially the one side of the street was residents that had lived there for 30, 40 years. On the other side of the street was all sober living facilities. And it was, those are the kinds of challenges that Costa Mesa was living with. Not what I think that we're living with at this point in time, but as you said, going neutral on this, we're in better shape. My other comment is, I know Nunzio's been sitting there quiet, but from a code enforcement point of view, how do you view this situation with regards to the number 4 and what we're talking about here tonight?
It's like the executive director said, it allows us at least a threshold for us to regulate, right? And enough for the number. We're still mindful of our demographics and understanding our city. Our paramount concern and actually mandate is to, preserve the health and safety of our residents. So we're mindful of the California Building Code as it regulates occupancy. We're mindful of case law like Briseño v. Santa Ana regarding the occupancy, what's considered habitable here in the city. So this is more in an attempt to address and provide a threshold to address those public nuisance concerns, right? And still be general enough and amplified enough to give us that perspective. So at the very minimum, it allows us to filter, those areas of concern that we have here in the city. That's our reality. We have a very dense city, but we also understand that we have to maintain that sense of affordable housing. So that's the balance that we're going to have to present and preserve when we interpret and implement this ordinance. How's that, Chair?
Thanks, Alvaro. I knew you'd come through.
Chair McLaughlin, I had one follow-up question to
Sure,
the
go ahead.
Senior Assistant Attorney.
Go ahead, Commissioner Ramos.
Thank you, Chair McLaughlin, for the context on Costa Mesa, and thank you, Senior Assistant Attorney, on that as well. So my question is, now that I better understand Costa Mesas and how it's really just focusing on the sober living facilities, I also understand that our language is being modeled off language of South County cities. So would we be the only city in Central Orange County that's now going to restrict how many leases can exist within at one residential address?
So with the proposed language, I believe that we will be among some of the first cities to adopt this in terms of Orange County. In our research, those were the cities that we found to have used these language to address issues and concern relating to regulating leases in Orange County.
Thank you.
So it's more or less a regulation of leases rather than any other specificity?
Correct.
Okay. Are there any other comments from the commission at this point in time? We'll go around the room one more time. Commissioner Alderete?
None.
Commissioner Calderon?
None.
Vice Chair Morrissey?
No comments, thank you.
Commissioner Fan?
No comment.
Okay, Commissioner Ramos?
None.
Commissioner Wu?
Just a sitting standard is different from punishing people because they cannot find housing.
Okay. All right, my question here at this point in time is, Min, where do we go from here? We've had our work study, we've had some discussions, we've had some key points brought up. What's the next steps from your standpoint and from the commission's standpoint?
Thank you, Chair. So based on the information and comments that we received tonight, we will be going back and making any more refinements as needed in order to address some of the concerns here. But based on what I've heard, I think much of your concerns have been addressed. There is a recommendation by Commissioner Ramos is to evaluate going to 5 leases. We will certainly be taking that into consideration, and we will have to evaluate how that will impact our current goal of regulating in any ways. And our final recommendation will be brought forth to the commission on the meeting of May 24th. in the form of a draft ordinance for you to review, consider, discuss, and make any final recommendation to the city council. And again, our goal is to be able to, at the minimum, evaluate every point of discussion here and evaluate whether or not we can make any refinements to address some of the comments. So the next meeting on the 24th will be a public hearing. At the meeting of April 26th, the commission did continue that to date certain. So therefore, the public hearing has been continued, and we will be able to conduct that hearing. Tonight is a workshop that is intermediary to that process.
Okay. Any other comments at this point in time from staff or anybody else?
That's all we have. I think we've spoken quite a bit.
All right, then at this point in time, we'll close the work session and we'll move on to comments.
Chair,
And
this is Sarah Bernal. If I
Yes.
may, request, I do see here on the Zoom call that we have a few members of the public, I believe. And if we could just ask if any of those people would like to comment on this item, just for the sake of ensuring that we give them the opportunity.
from a legal point of view, is this something we can allow at this point in time? John?
Sarah, may
John?
I ask? Oh, yes. Sarah, were those comments, are they pertinent to this agenda item? Do you know, or are you going to ascertain that?
I don't know. I just noticed on the call log that we do have other members of the members of the public in this meeting. And so I just wanted to see if we wanted to call on them to see if they'd like to comment.
Yes, certainly. The public is allowed to come on any matter of business that does appear on the agenda.
Okay.
I think that it's important, however, for folks to realize that this is not an action item, that no action is being taken on this item tonight.
Okay. All right, well then with that said, before we will keep the current work study open and we'll open it to the public. Madam Secretary, please give us the first person.
Thank you. If you'd like to comment on this item and you are participating via Zoom, please select the hand icon. Or if you're calling in, please press *9. We'll wait about 20 seconds to see if we have any speakers on this item.
And you will have 3 minutes. You'll identify yourself, identify the subject, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Chair, we do not have any speakers. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Hello?
I have Carla Juarez.
Yes, I don't have an icon to raise my hand. May I?
Go ahead, Carla, you have 3 minutes. Again, your name is Carla Juarez?
Yes, my name is Carla Juarez and I'm a resident of Santa Ana, Ward 5. And I would like to speak on this item. I believe because we do have more than 50% of the residents of Santa Ana that are renters, that this is not accommodating or providing sufficient opportunity for housing for residents. I think it will have the opposite effect. It's going to discriminate against residents, especially those that are of low income, especially targeting residents from the CARE program. Residents that applied to the CARE program was for help, not to be discriminated against and pointed at and having the most lease in one house, and now will be in jeopardy of losing their home. Where are the residents going to go? Do they become homeless as well? Most of them are already considered homeless because they don't have the secure housing. And some are couch surfing, which also brings me to my next point. These will discriminate to the single people that will probably not get a lease, because if the landlord's trying to get the most money from their leases, they're not going to go to the single folks to get a lease. So I think they're going to be contrabanding a place to live or to sleep in. When we talk about quality housing over volume, I do hope that person that said quality housing over volume loses the person's privilege, because that person is talking from a sense of privilege. I hope that person does lose all funds, all safety nets, housing, money, and lives on the streets. Then your point of view will change, that you will rather share a room or share a space in the living room instead of living on the streets. And I mean, this is something that we will be proud of as City of Santa Ana, to be pointing out those residents and discriminating specifically those residents out of their housing. I don't think that's the Santa Ana that I'm proud of or that I've come to love. So I urge that you guys rethink this. I mean, I would like to know who is the person that came up with this on restricting the lease, and what was the motivation? Like, and I would like to know who comes up with these. Like, it doesn't seem that we're moving Santa Ana forward. It seems that we're cleansing, and we're trying to remove residents that are low income, residents that are already like trying to survive. And I think my time is up. But thank you for opening it up.
Thank you, Carla. Next.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item? Please press *9 if you're calling in, or select the hand icon. We'll wait just a few seconds.
I see Daisy Cruz.
Yes, I see that she has unmuted herself. Please go ahead, Daisy. We have started timing.
Hi, thank you. I also didn't have the icon for the hand. Yes, my name is Daisy Cruz. Good evening, and I'm with the Kennedy Commission. And I agree with Carla. Thinking of our low-income residents in the city of Santa Ana, it's so important right now to make sure that our renters are secured and are taken care of. And this is not the way to do that. It feels that it is criminalizing poverty. And as Carla had said, 50% of residents in Santa Ana are renters. Where will they go? This is targeting residents who are already struggling, who are also living together to make ends meet in the first place. So it's definitely something that should be looked at again and with a different lens, I believe. We need to really think about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Daisy. Madam Secretary, do we have anybody else at this point in time?
Sure, no, those were the only callers that are on the log here.
Okay. Thank you. Having the last person finish, we will now once again close the work study program, and we'll move on to final comments by staff.
Thank you, Chair. I have none tonight. Ali, do you have anything?
No, thank you for your feedback and comments, and we will address them on May 24th when we return to you.
Okay, thank you, Ali. All right, we'll just go down the list, and Commissioner Alderete.
I wanted to make one comment. I think that, the one thing we have to be careful of with this ordinance is, we can have well-intended ideas about this, but unintended consequences. And I think that's how you end up with regulation being punishment. That's kind of what this country's based off of, right? You implement a law and there's a disparate impact to some folks. Sentencing guidelines show that out, and that's what my concern is here. And what I mean by sentencing guidelines is when there is sentencing guidelines, let's just say punishes crack more severely than powder cocaine, there's an impact of that, and then people are punished as a result. Now that is a crime, but there's other restrictive covenants that have been in place for years, and it impacts where people can live and the color of those people that can live in those neighborhoods. So definitely I see regulation can be punishment. I'm not sure that it is, but I'm not convinced that it isn't either. But I appreciate the lively discussion that we had. I think it's helpful for us to have these discussions and perhaps to even have disagreements. So I want to thank all commissioners for their comments.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Alderete. Commissioner Calderon.
Thank you. I just want to echo also what Commissioner Alderete mentioned. Really great conversations, good dialogue, and I also want to thank members of the public for voicing out their opinions. This is a very interesting case that's being brought up on us, and yeah, we should definitely look at different angles. So yes, thank you.
Okay, Vice Chair Morrissey.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I agree. We don't want to create a situation where, we're creating criminals out of people who are living in poverty. So I think there's a solution here, and it's very challenging for us to figure it out. And I think we'll in the end, we'll do that. Also, I just want to mention I did attend the environmental justice meeting for the Logan neighborhood, and staff did a great job of organizing that and receiving input. I think those are important meetings because it became kind of a sticking point in approving the general plan last time around, and now residents are getting more involved, and I think staff's doing a good job of getting the word out. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Morrissey. Commissioner Fan.
Yes, I'd like to thank you, staff, and the public and all the commissioners for their perspective. Yeah, I think the issue of housing or anything relating to it is worth our time to discuss, as well as I think that to craft something that policy that is beneficial for the majority of our city inhabitants. I think it's worth to explore every perspective, and I think discussion is open discussion is the best way to do it, regardless of how polarizing it is. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Ramos.
Yes, like everyone else has said, I also want to thank the commissioners. I want to thank staff for bringing this back and having this discussion with us. I also want to challenge all of us as commissioners that have a vote on this to really think creatively and to work to intentionally recommend policy that will not further disadvantage the most vulnerable in the city. I think we all have a great privilege in being here. I know many on the commission are homeowners. I myself am still a tenant. And as tenants, we face other sorts of housing insecurity. So everyone that is blessed to not be in that position, including myself, I just ask that we continue to think of those that don't have the same privileges that we do. And lastly, I just really want to thank our planning secretary, Sarah. Sarah, thank you so much for pointing out that there were members of the public on the Zoom with us. Thank you, Carla. Thank you, Daisy, for sharing your perspectives. As much as possible, I also want to see this body engaging with the community more directly to ensure that we have the community perspective when we're making decisions. But thank you, Anna. I look forward to seeing what comes back to us. And thank you, Director Min, for taking into consideration the recommendation of 5. So I look forward to seeing what's pop up.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Ramos. Commissioner Wu.
I don't have anything to say except for I am disturbed by some unfair accusation. I don't think the update has been I like what Commissioner Alderete said, that sometime the way we view things may have unintended consequences, but there are groups that are being ignored, and those are the ones that bubble up from the neighborhood associations and the homeowners that are trying to protect the integrity of the neighborhood. And it's not that I am unsympathetic to people who live in poverty, because I've worked for an organization for over 25 years and have had a whole career working with that population. And I think we are directing resources to help it. But there's also the integrity of the neighborhood. and some things that we don't have jurisdiction over.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Wu. I'll be brief. I mean, I think we had a great dialogue going on all the topics of conversation this evening. I appreciate everybody hanging in there for the duration, and you know, I look forward to seeing what comes from staff at the next commission meeting. And with that, if there's no other comments, I'd like to adjourn this meeting for the next regularly scheduled meeting that will be held teleconference on Monday, the 24th at 5:30 p.m. With that, good evening to everybody. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.